Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of the CFL's Trade Tree, episode 17. My name is Robert Dalton, co-host of the Rouge Radio podcast, and before we get on to this week's video, make sure to hit subscribe and like to make sure that any content that we come forth will be automatically sent to your YouTube account. Now that we got that ahead, let's get to this week's video and show you how the Saskatchewan Roughriders could have drafted Henoc Muamba. And they ended up getting him in free agency for about a year and a half, and they ended up with Jorgen Hus on their current roster. So we go back to 2007, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, getting off a fresh 99 season in 2006, are becoming great. Saskatchewan already fulfilling somewhat success in 2005. They didn't like their prior rivals. Now I'm paraphrasing, this didn't actually particularly happen, but it just seemed kind of shady. Well, again, I wouldn't be shady. Okay, forget the past 5 seconds that I was actually talking. Saskatchewan Roughriders purged the Winnipeg Blue Bombers coaching staff. Purged. It was just more of like, hey, we got an opening for you. All right, Mike Gibson goes on to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Mike Abumetric goes to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Oh my God, things are happening. Oh, that was before social media. We worried about before actually thinking logically. The Saskatchewan Roughriders weren't done. They said, hey, we need some help on the offensive line. And they said, hey, Winnipeg, that Jermese Jones guy, can we get him? And Bomber said, yeah, we want a pick. And Saskatchewan said, sure. And there we have it. The initial trade was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers sending offensive lineman Jermese Jones to the Saskatchewan Roughriders for a conditional pick in 2009. Did it work out for both teams? Oh, Winnipeg or Saskatchewan actually won the Grey Cup that year. So, you tell me. Winnipeg, well, we're not going to talk about that. The Mike Kelly years, I guess. Well, lo and behold, that's Jermese Jones left as a free agent to the Calgary Stampeders. So on that side, it was one and done. Easy peasy, right? Yeah. And then the next trade. This technically should be the start of this video. The trade that happened in 2009. But these two teams actually intertwined picks and trades. It was almost like, this trade tree is like a DNA of a trade tree. I mean, it's a DNA of, to how this team got this player and yada, yada, yada. So because these two teams are intertwined, and you'll see it in this video, I kind of said, hey, what would be cool is if we started this trade tree in 2007 to make it a little bit more fun. And, well, it's my video, so kind of do what I want. Anyway, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers took that conditional pick and sent it back to Saskatchewan as part of a 3-way deal. The Saskatchewan Roughriders received that conditional pick in 2009, which ended up being a 5th round pick, and the rights to Tyler Rell, Dan Goodspeed, a 2010 5th round pick, and a 2010 1st round pick. Now, you notice I put an asterisk on that 1st round pick, and we'll get to it when we do. And then, of course, we'll also talk about the Hamilton Tiger Cats being a part of it. It was a 3-way deal, but more on that later. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, in return, received the 2012 6th round pick, a 2010 4th round pick, safety Brady Brown, Jean-Francois Morin-Roberge, and receiver Darius Bowman. Now, on the Winnipeg side of things, it's kind of interesting and quick, so we'll deal with that one. Darius Bowman's career was very good. I mean, he's an eventual Hall of Famer. It didn't start out that way. In fact, if you look throughout his career, his production, his worst years in regards to pass completion and yardage and whatnot, his worst years were in Winnipeg. And I'm also including the 2018 time that he was here for only a matter of weeks before he shipped off to Montreal. 2010, they were just kind of they didn't like his production, and so they just cut him loose before he signed on with the Edmonton Elks. And that's when his Hall of Fame career really took a start. Jean-Francois Morin-Roberge was a draft pick that originally belonged to Winnipeg, so I really couldn't find any details to maybe start with that. However, he was part of this deal since Winnipeg. He was cut before the 2009 trade, or 2009 training camp, and never actually played a snap after that, so that's done. Brady Brown actually had a pretty decent career, primarily as a special teams guy, but filled in admirably at the safety position when Ian Logan wasn't up to par, or when he was injured. After 2012, he was cut loose and never played football at that point. 2012 6th round pick, You might as well have not drafted anybody. The Bombers sent that to Calgary in exchange for defensive lineman Pat McDonald, who was okay. He was an okay special teams guy. Never got a lot of look. Was released in 2012 and never saw the football field again after that either. The 2010 fourth-round pick, that was interesting. The Bombers, they didn't use it. They actually sent that to Calgary as well, this time for punter Mike Renaud. In his 6 seasons with Winnipeg, yeah, he was pretty decent. And after he retired after the 2014 season, the poster boy for consistency as far as punting goes. And yeah, he was asked to maybe place kick a game here or two, and he wasn't good, but that wasn't his forte. It was punting. And in 2010, it led to him to being the Bombers nominee for most outstanding special teams. So you gave up Jermese Jones, and you got 6 years out of Mike Renaud. Hey, not bad. Really not bad for Winnipeg side of things. And on the Saskatchewan side of things, it actually, they did better. This isn't. There's no rhyme or reason to sugarcoat this for Saskatchewan fans out there. Winnipeg did pretty decent, aside from not having a Darius Bowman in his prime. But I digress. Let's go to the Saskatchewan side of things, shall we? The Saskatchewan Roughriders. Now, we mentioned Hamilton getting part of this. Saskatchewan actually packaged the 2009 conditional pick, which was a 5th-round pick, and Dan Goodspeed to the Hamilton Tiger Cats in exchange for offensive lineman Jordan Rempel. Now, the Riders actually had their eye on Rempel in the year prior. They just never really got to it, and he never ended up playing the game for the Riders after this, and really was a non-issue. So thanks, Hamilton, for taking Dan Goodspeed in this trade. Tyrell never actually set foot in the CFL field, so therefore he never really signed, so that at that branch ended there. Those 2 draft picks actually have some legs and are quite interesting. Now, I mentioned the asterisks on the 2010 first-round pick. It wasn't actual given up. It was an agreement to defer first-round picks. And the Saskatchewan Roughriders actually had the option to defer to 2011 or to 2010. So they gambled and said, hey, Winnipeg might actually be good in 2010. Spoiler alert, they weren't. They actually ended up picking first overall in 2011. Yes, that's the Saskatchewan Roughriders actually lost the opportunity to draft Henoc Muamba. Yeah, they signed him as a free agent 5 years later. Can you imagine what the Riders might have looked like in 2011 to 2013 with Henoc Muamba? Kind of scary. Yeah. It is. Who knows? I guess. I think it was. Anyway, let's go for that first round tree, huh? Well, the first round pick was actually packaged, which was 2nd overall, was sent to the Toronto Argonauts along with their 2nd round pick, as well as Jamie Borum. Now, I kind of touched on this in episode 3 of the Kerry Joseph saga, so I'm not going to go into it. However, when I look at it from this view, that portion actually starts to make a little bit more sense for me if you remember that I was kind of confused on this one. Anyway, long story short, the Toronto Argonauts actually shipped back their first round pick, which was 1st overall, and the 8th overall pick, which ended up being the first, which was still the 2nd round because Hamilton forfeited their pick. But again, we're not talking about Hamilton this far. The Saskatchewan Roughriders picked with the 8th overall selection, Jeremy Sisko. That 1st overall selection was Shamari Williams. Keep Shamari Williams in the back of your mind because he's going to show up in the next branch, which we're going to go right now. The Saskatchewan Roughriders, with their 5th round pick in 2010, select offensive lineman Patrick Neufeld. Now, a lot of you were thinking, oh, I remember Patrick Neufeld. You talked about this. Yes, and I don't remember the episode number, but we've talked about this trade. In 2013, the Saskatchewan Roughriders packaged Patrick Neufeld and a 5th round pick in 2015 to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, there's that team again, in exchange for defensive lineman Alex Hall and a 2nd round pick in 2014. All right, so we've talked about this trade, so let's go to the Rouge Radio lightning round, all right? Alex Hall finished off the 2013 season and went off to the NFL, and albeit he did sign off as a free agent in 2015, the branch ends there. The 2014 2nd round pick was actually sent to the Hamilton Tiger Cats as well as the 9th overall pick to the Hamilton Tiger Cats in exchange for Shamari Williams, there's that name again, punter Josh Bartell, and the 2014 8th overall pick. You with me so far? All right. The Hamilton Tiger Cats really were enamored with that 8th overall pick and said, hey, we want that back. The 8th overall pick was sent back to the Saskatchewan Hamilton Tiger Cats in exchange for the 11th overall pick and the 17th overall pick. The 11th overall pick was used to select defensive lineman Dylan Ainsworth, who left as a free agent after 2016. The 17th overall pick was used, no, it wasn't used, it was sent to Winnipeg. Yep, there's that trade again, for the 26th and 20th overall selections in the 2014 draft. With me still. Let's continue, because there's still some legs to this one. The 20th overall pick was used to select kicker Johnny Mark, which was traded to Ottawa for a conditional pick, but because he returned to school, the conditions weren't met, so Ottawa didn't have to give up anything. The 26th overall pick was used to select receiver Chris Bastien, who was traded in 2015 to, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers with the 2015 second-round pick in exchange for a third-round pick in 2015, and Corey Watson, the 2015 third-round pick was used to select defensive lineman Rory Conop, who was released after the 2015 season. Corey Watson shortly thereafter was traded with the second-round pick to the Edmonton Elks in exchange for a third-round pick in 2016, and Jorgen Hus. The 2016 third-round pick was used to select kicker Quinn Van Glissick, who was released shortly thereafter and is still kicking around, but still hasn't actually maintained a proper roster spot. Jorgen Hus, at this time, still with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And there it is. A trade in 2007 has domino effects that affects current teams. That's true. And that's fun. It was a long way to go about it, but it's still fun. That'll do it for this week's video. If you want to have any comments, hit the comments below. And again, if you haven't already, hit subscribe, hit like if you really like to, tell all your friends. And of course, if you have any future trade tree suggestions, hit me up on Twitter. I can be found at Rouge Dalts. The podcast can be found at Rouge Radio. And of course, this video is powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network. It's CF Pod Network on Twitter.